everybody out there, how's it going? Welcome to Screen Speak, the podcast that's all about movies, life, and so much more. I'm Jordan Anderson, and this is my podcast, and I really appreciate you for coming by and giving it a listen. So, first, before I get into everything, how's everybody doing out there? You doing okay? Has anybody asked you that for a while? I don't know. It's my experience, we're always so busy, we got a lot going on, we need to sometimes take that extra second to ask people how they're doing, because mental health is very important. But anyway, you're not here to listen to me talk about mental health, you're here to listen to me talk about movies and and what I think about them and their tie-ins to life and all that other good stuff. So, the movie I want to talk about today is actually one that I actually picked up just yesterday at Half Price Books and Records, which if you ever get a chance to stop by at one of those, I'm not sure if they're located everywhere or where all their locations are at, but I sometimes go there, frequent them for taking a look at their physical media. I'm still a believer of buying physical media, especially Blu-rays, 4K if it's an option, and DVD if there's nothing else that is of a higher resolution. So, but anywho, yesterday towards the end of my day, I was like, it's been a long day, kind of a long week. I want to go and treat myself and get a movie. So I went to Half Price Books, started browsing around, and I came across the movie Mystery Men. And I was like, gosh, that is a movie that I have not seen for some time. And it's an interesting one to me where I was like, would it hold up? Because I had a lot of nostalgic memories for liking it when I was younger. But I don't know, a movie like Mystery Men, and it's one of the first things I thought of is just, is it going to be one that stands the test of time, or is there anything that's a little dated on it? And so I was like, well, I am in the mood for something a little light to watch, and it'd be a great one to own for the collection, so why don't we go ahead and give it a whirl. So anyways, I picked it up. I'm holding it right now, actually, as I'm talking about it with you all, so let's go ahead and just jump right in. So, so Mystery Men, it actually came out in July of 1999, and it has like a seriously incredible cast, which many of them are still working today and working on great things. The cast has Ben Stiller, William H. Macy, Hank Azaria, Janeane Garofalo, Paul Reubens, Wes Studi, Greg Kinnear, Jeffrey Rush, Eddie Izzard, Tom Waits is in it. There's a handful of others that I could talk about in that, but it's a tremendous cast, and I'm going to touch on each of the characters, the ones I care enough anyway to talk about later on in this episode, but it's an incredible cast for a movie like this, and I definitely think without having an eclectic ensemble cast in the movie like this, I don't know. I don't think the movie would work. So, so anyways, it was released in July of 1999. I told you about the cast. Let me tell you about the story. I'm actually just going to read. I'm just going to read the back of the Blu-ray because that's easy. So, it says, the strongest comedic cast in history has united to become the strangest superhero team ever in Mystery Men. They're a ragtag team of hero wannabes that includes Mr. Furious, Ben Stiller, the Shoveler, William H. Macy, the Blue Raja, Hank Azaria, the Bowler, Janeane Garofalo, the Spleen, Paul Reubens, Invisible Boy, Kel Michelle. I know he was in like a burger thing, I think, at one time, but I don't know. And the Sphinx, Wes Studi. And then, okay, now it's actually getting into the synopsis. So when Captain Amazing, played by Greg Kinnear, falls into the hands of evil madman Casanova Frankenstein, played by the Academy Award winner Jeffrey Rush, and his disco-dancing henchmen, that's something I gotta talk about, there's suddenly a chance for these aspiring superheroes to show what they can do in this hilariously funny and thoroughly original misadventure. That's interesting. Misadventure. I don't hear that used in a lot of conversation. But anywho, yeah, that's the story. But I wanna elaborate on it a little bit more. So the movie opens, and you can very much tell right from the get-go that the tone of the movie is setting out to be in the vein of 90s Batman, like kind of Tim Burton style, very colorful, eclectic, and flashy almost cartoony and kind of over the top in its tone and the world that it has. Everything is just very everything is very much like a comic book, which is great because it's a movie about superheroes. But everything just feels really big and larger than life, and even the personalities and the characters in movies, everybody just feels like they are in a comic book, and very intentionally so. The movie is not trying to be a grounded, deep, and serious take on superheroes like Chris Nolan was eventually able to establish in his Dark Knight trilogy that, so many other films have since tried to emulate that tone. But no, this movie is purposely light on purpose, and in a way, I'm thinking about this out loud. This kind of movie is actually very similar to a movie like Galaxy Quest, where it's taking a particular genre of film, of writing, and it's giving it a modern twist while making fun of some of the tropes and cliches that you're so familiar with and used to seeing in movies of its time beforehand. So I think Mystery Men, in terms of superhero spoofs, if you want to call it that, it excels very well at being very clever, while actually having an interesting story. And that's one of the keys, I think, when you're thinking of like spoof comedies or anything like that, is the best ones to me. While they're making fun of things that you're no doubt familiar with or tropes, there is still a story that's running through the underline of the movie, and it's a story that is actually interesting in and of itself. Like, if you took away all the jokes and everything else, the story itself would be compelling enough that you may actually just be interested in it, jokes aside. But that's what I like about the movie, is that even though it's a spoof, it's a clever spoof, and it still has an interesting story. And I believe, I'm going to Google this actually, because I tried to do a little bit of research before I just hit record on this, but I'm almost certain that Mystery Men is actually based off of a comic, and I think it's a Dark Horse comic. Let me take a look here. So, yeah, Dark Horse Comics, Mystery Men. Let's see what this says. Yeah, so, okay, yeah, it's talking about the synopsis, how it's a film. Well, you know what, I'll have to do some research, or somebody can comment and tell me about it later. It's based off a comic book. It'd be interesting to find that comic book and actually read it. I may have to come up with that. Anyway, so it's a spoof with the story, and I love the story because of the clever writing and everything like that, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So, apart from the clever take on the superhero world, the stellar cast, the time period it was released in, right before 2000, I have to talk about, I think, my favorite aspect of this movie as a whole, especially after revisiting it, because I just watched it last night, so it's fresh in my head, is all throughout the movie. And some may argue that, this is one of the reasons why it doesn't hold up or something like that, but there is just a wonderful sense of charm and innocence to this movie. The characters are very playful in their banter, and it is very light and fluffy at times, but I don't know, I just, there were scenes that I was smiling because I, likely for nostalgic reasons, I was remembering seeing them for the first time, for a couple of them in particular. But mostly, I just like seeing a lighter superhero movie, kind of for a change. I feel like so many of the ones that I've come across recently, maybe with the exception of like a Thor Ragnarok or one of those ones where they are being quite witty and whatnot. A lot of them do have like pretty serious stories, or there's like world-ending stakes and things like that. And I don't know, this one, it's like, I don't know, you understand that the tone of the movie right from the get-go, and I think you either love it or you hate it. I don't really know if there's a middle ground for this kind of movie, but I just can't help but find the cast tremendously charming in the roles, and there is a wonderful sense of innocence throughout the movie, and how it portrays superheroes, and even kind of, if you look at it, it's almost like the director of this movie was like a kid trying to put out a movie to be like, what are I don't even know if this is making sense. It's like, how do I say this? It's like thinking about how you saw superheroes when you were a kid and then trying to instill that childlike wonder in a movie about superheroes while still being modern and relevant and having smart commentary on those tropes that I mentioned in the spoof aspects of the movie. It's really interesting, but yeah, it's just a wonderfully charming and innocent film for a lot of aspects of it. So I don't know. Let me know if you think that, if you ever do get around to watching it, but I think so. Now I have to really dive into the characters because this is an ensemble movie, and there's a wonderful cast of eclectic characters with funny names and backstories. Because of course everybody in this is as a wannabe superhero, so everybody has like their secret identity, and they have like their main name and their specialties. So I made a list of the ones that I wanted to talk about, and I'm just gonna run down them real quick. And see what I end up saying. So, so first there's Hank Azaria, which Hank Azaria, he is, do you want to call him a national treasure? Is that what we want to call him? Because I think he is. The man is so immensely talented, not only as an actor, but as a voice actor as well. Most people will recognize many of his voices that he's famous for on The Simpsons. I think he's the bartender Mo, and he's the one nerd guy, the guy that likes the comics. This is the best impression that I can do of him. And who else does? God, he voices a lot of people on the Simpsons, but anywho, he plays the Blue Raja, master of silverware. I can't do a great impression of it, but I kept saying it over and over after I watched the movie. Is when they have him in his first scene at home, where like he's like preparing his character in front of a mirror and he's rehearsing his lines. He's like, red eyes, red eyes, red eyes. It's just the way he says it, and he has like this whole it's like an overcomplicated backstory where he's saying that he's like from like his character originates from like the British dynasty and their takeover of like the Indian nation, and I don't even know what it all is, but anywho, he's absolutely wonderful, and his specialty is he throws silverware at people, and not knives, because they openly comment. They're like, well, how come you don't ever throw a knife? It's like you're always throwing forks and spoons. It's like a knife is going to actually do something, going to be effective, and he's like repulsed at the idea. He's just like, well, he's like, I'm not knife man or stabby boy. He's like, I'm the Blue Raja. And I don't know, he's definitely a standout in the movie, and I can't help but have a silly dumb grin on my face anytime he opens his mouth. And then there's William H. Macy, the Shoveler. I commented on this that, like, to me, he's like the blue collar Captain America. His whole get up and look is that he's like basically a construction worker that just decided to be a superhero one day. And he's a man's man, but he's got a wife and kids at home. He believes in putting the, food on the table and being a good father and supporter, that just real go-getter American, attitude. But, William H. Macy, he's just a tremendous actor, and talk about having range. I mean, the guy has done so many wonderful movies. And real quick, I'll plug one of his movies here actually in a second. That never gets talked about. I'm going to take a sip of water here, so hang on. Anytime I bring up William H. Macy or get a chance to talk about him, I have to mention his movie Rudderless, that he directed it. I don't know if he wrote it, but it's a very small independent film, but if you ever get a chance to check that out, just give it a check. I mean, check it out. It's a great movie. Anywho. Then Ben Stiller as Mr. Furious. And I think of all the actors that, I mean, because these characters are so over the top and zany, and they have, they're just very colorful and outlandish, I have to imagine that he would have so much fun filming that character, because out of all the people, I mean, everybody has like their thing. Blue Raja has forks and spoons. The Shoveler has a shoveler. The bowler has a bowling ball, etc. But Mr. Furious has nothing. He has rage. It's like he wants to be the Hulk, but he can't turn green, and so like he just gets angry at things, but he's a kind of a dork, and he's clumsy. He doesn't have like a black belt or anything like that. He just yells at people and it's just like, ah! Oh my gosh, I'm laughing so much just thinking about it. But I will get to one of my favorite scenes with him a little bit later on in this episode. But yeah, he is hilarious as Mr. Furious, and just great casting choice for that. And then one of the more very eclectic characters in this is Paul Reubens as the Spleen, and I don't know what his character decision was for talking like this. I don't know, but it's very funny. And Paul Reubens, he's somebody that's faded from the spotlight for I think there was some controversy with him in real life, but I don't want to get into all that stuff here. But most people know him as Pee Wee Herman from like Pee Wee's Big Adventure, and as the Spleen. If you're looking for the least mature character in this movie, just someone purely there for quite literally fart jokes, that's where Paul Reubens comes in, because his power is that he has deadly gas, and if you pull his fingers, you find out what that power does to people. And I'm not going to pretend that I love his character, but it is funny from a very juvenile level. And yeah, it's funny, but I have a feeling that he's probably the character for a lot of people that would make or break them liking the movie, just simply because it's such low level humor in some people's eyes. But whatever, in a movie like this, I think you have to understand what you're getting into. It's light. It's not meant to be taken seriously. Just, relax and have a good time with it. Then there's Janeane Garofalo, who plays the bowler. She's cool. I've seen her in a handful of things. I know that she's actually she's worked with Ben Stiller in other movies in the past. But she's the bowler, and she has a magical bowling ball that has her dad's skull in it, and she's able to have it like levitate and attack people. Oh, and she also talks to it too, because and no one else can hear it, of course. So she'll just be randomly, or she'll just be talking, and then randomly she'll just interject and talk to her dad as if he's right there in the room, and then everybody gives her a weird look. But anywho, she's good. She has a good fun wit to her. I guess her character is a pretty sassy person, and I don't know. She's pretty fun. I don't really have a lot to say about her. And then a very interesting character, and he's terribly mysterious, is Wes Studi as the Sphinx. And his power, one of the main ones they show, is that he can cut a gun in half with his mind. And he's some big crime slinger from the South, as the Shoveler says. And Wes Studi, I think it's so cool that he played the role and was game for it, because he's a Native American, and I think of him as a pretty accomplished character actor, though I doubt he hardly gets a lot of the credit that he deserves. Two movies I know that he was in that got really big wide acclaim is Dances with Wolves. I think he's one of the main Indians in that, and he may have been in The Last of the Mohicans. I may have to double check that one. But then he's also in Avatar. He's Zoe Saldana's father, the chief of the main. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of the alien race? I mean, they're blue. How hard can that be to remember? Oh my gosh, I'm not going to move on from this until I remember. What the heck is the race in the Avatar movies? They're blue, and oh my. Okay, so hang on. So they. Oh my gosh, why am I stuck on this? Well, I'm sitting in front of a computer. Why don't I just figure this out? Let's see. Avatar, aliens. Alien race, because I don't know, who are they? My god, the Na'vi. Jeez. Well, you can probably skip past that last minute in the podcast that went nowhere. Okay, so no, actually, I want to talk about Wes Studi here for a second, because they make fun of some of like the stereotypes with a Native American chief, and that like he he's supposed to be really knowledgeable and have like wise words of wisdom and take a simple thing and turn it on its head. But he eventually, like, you kind of realize he eventually doesn't really know what he's talking about. And I'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, he's fantastic in the movie. Another supporting character, not a big one, but one I wanted to comment on, is Eddie Izzard as Tony P, the head of the disco gang. And I keep doing the Blue Raja voice for those because it's just so contagious once you hear it. But Eddie Izzard is Tony P, and he is the head of the disco gang, and he has quite the getup, amazing hair in the movie, and quite fashionable 60s attire, and he's obsessed with disco and crime, and that's a very interesting combination for a gangster. And I think it's an interesting is juxtaposition. I'm probably going to build up my vocabulary as I record this podcast. All right, what does juxtaposition mean? This means the fact of two things being seen or placed closely together with contrasting effect. Okay, then yeah, I'm correct. Hey, I know some words outside of, or, you know what I mean. I'm saying I have a decent vocabulary. So yes, his character has an interesting juxtaposition. Am I saying that right? Juxtaposition. He has that is such a tongue twister. He has an interesting juxtaposition as Tony P, because he's supposed to be this ruthless, very scary gangster, and yet he busts a move to Bee Gees like Saturday Night Fever. And so it's funny because like you take one thing as light and then another thing is serious and you put them together. And anyways, I'm just a big fan of Eddie Izzard. My older brother really likes him actually a lot. We used to watch him a lot when we were growing up, particularly I think at our dad's, and we listened to audio, some of his comedy albums that he recorded. And I still think he performs now, but he's a really, really interesting guy. And I think if you ever want to look him up sometime and listen to him, he may have popped on Joe Rogan or maybe Mark Maron's podcast at one point. I don't know. Look it up. He's a really, really interesting comedian and personality. So anyways, he's very fun as Tony P. And then of course there is Greg Kinnear as Captain Amazing, and it's so great what they do with him because they're quite literally, I think, trying to do a ripoff of Captain America with maybe a hint of Superman in there. And I say Superman because one of the things they directly make fun of, which I will comment on now, is how his alter ego, just like Clark Kent Superman, is indistinguishable from his character because he wears glasses. And that's something I've always thought is so dumb with Superman. I mean, there's a lot of belief I can suspend when I'm watching a comic book movie and something that's not based in reality. But how am I really supposed to get behind, Clark Kent, he wears glasses and Superman doesn't? Oh, they're totally different people because contacts don't exist. Like, I don't know. Someone can maybe fill me in on how they're able to not think that's just the most ridiculous thing in the world and still have it work. I don't know. I can never get behind it. But what I love about that aspect of Captain Amazing is that Ben Stiller at one point literally directly said, he's just like, I think that Captain Amazing is Lance, whoever his last name is. He's a billionaire just like Bruce Wayne, Batman. And he comments, he's like, I think it's him. And his friends are just like, oh my God, here we go again. And he's like, no, he's like, I'm serious. Like, he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, look, look at him. It has to be him. Like, it's the guy. And then I think it's the shoveler that he says, he's like, no, he's like, that's impossible. Because when he takes off his glasses, like, it's not, I don't remember what he says. They have a very funny play of words on it. And then Ben Stiller, when you think that he's the only person with common sense in the room, he says an idiotic thing where he's like, well, yeah, because when he takes off the glasses, he transforms. It's just so silly, but I love that kind of fun wordplay and just, commentary on something that a lot of people are probably thinking, but nobody really has taken the time to actually voice it. And I just love it. That's super, super funny. And there's probably a word for that. Is it meta? Is that the thing where like it's being very like in on what it's trying to do? I don't know. Who knows? But the other thing I like about Captain Amazing is that his character is, he's definitely kind of a jerk. He's a pretty boy, kind of pompous jerk. Like, he's let fame get to his head, and so now he's like a NASCAR driver now. All he cares about is his like sponsors and everything like that. He doesn't even care about really saving people. It's just all image, and he's also dumb, which I kind of like. Is like Greg Kinnear does such a good job of flirting that line between, I'm an amazing guy. I'm here to protect the people. Look at me. I'm a good example for our youth. And then he will say like stupid things. he'll get word phrases wrong, or he'll try to pronounce something and just completely botch it and mess it up. And yeah, it's just he's fantastic. And his character ends is one of the funniest parts of the movie. I don't want to spoil it, so definitely watch it. And then how could I not continue to talk about the great characters without talking about the fantastic Jeffrey Rush as Casanova Frankenstein? Casanova Frankenstein, the writer of this movie, I'm going to have to look him up. That is a wonderful name for a villain. It's so great. Casanova has such a mystique and gravitas to the name. I mean, it's a wonderful name. And then, of course, Frankenstein is spooky and scary. So it's a great first and last name. But Jeffrey Rush, out of all the actors in here, and I'm not saying all the other ones don't have a claim in their own right and have done, wonderful things, but he is the most serious actor, if you will, in the movie. He is an Academy Award winner. I've seen him in a handful of fantastic films. Probably my favorite of his is one that I think it was probably the one he was most recently nominated for, which was The King's Speech. He's absolutely tremendous, and I adore him as an actor. But he's so great with Casanova Frankenstein because he's like the epitome of like the I don't even want to say like the mustache twirling villain, but he's so deliciously over the top. Everything he says, like he has a wonderful way of words, and he seems like he should be like holding a glass of wine the whole time, and because he's so cultured and sophisticated, he's like the Hannibal Lecter of cartoony villains. And anyways, he's fantastic. And one of the scenes that you have to bring up with him, where you're like, that shows you the sign of an actor that doesn't, knows when it's okay to not take himself too seriously, and can I don't know, just be really down to earth. Because there's a scene where the spleen corners him in a car. The spleen puts his butt up against the window and just lets out a huge fart. And it's right up on Jeffrey Rush's character, and his face is priceless. I die every time I see it. And I realize, it's, again, very juvenile humor, but you know what? Damn it, it's funny. It's just funny on a really basic level, but oh my god, that scene kills me. But Jeffrey Rush, he's wonderful, and you can tell he's having so much fun, along with the whole cast. I can only imagine how much fun everybody had making a movie like this. But anyways, I digress. And then a very, very small character, and then I'll get to the last character, and then I'll continue, because again, there's just so many characters to talk about. There's Tom Waits as, say it with me, Heller. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Tom Waits, which I gotta look him up here quick too, because I think he's in a band, or he's a singer and a songwriter, I think. He's very famous for something. Let me see. I guess we're on the Tom Waits detour right now. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. So he's a singer, songwriter, musician, composer, and actor. But he's known for, is it The Band? Like the 1970s? The Band? Yeah, I don't know. The one, the Band has that song in Easy Rider. The take a low walk. Somebody will know what the heck I'm talking about. But anyways, yeah, he's awesome. And he has this like really, really cool really cool personality. He just strikes me as one of those guys you would love to meet and just like have a beer with or something. Because I don't know, seems like that guy has seen and done a lot of things in his life. But he is great as Heller, who is a weapons designer that contacts the Mystery Men and designs non-lethal but extremely creative weapons for the whole squad. And anyways, he's a cool character. And gosh, should have drank like a gallon of water before this. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's because it's the morning. You ever? I can't be the only person that also has that. You have like morning grogginess, like your voice is like, ugh. And I don't know. Hang on. That's nice. Refreshing. So then the last, and let's be real, he's the most important character of this movie. It's Dane Cook as the Waffler. Waffle Man! Bad guys of history! Extra crispy! Oh, wow. Yeah, Dane Cook is in this movie, and he's in it for only a scene. It's like 30 seconds, a minute, tops, but it's a scene with all the superheroes. There's a whole bunch of them that are trying out because they want to be on the Mystery Men team, and Dane Cook shows up as the Waffler. And like at one point, I think he's supposed to have it plugged in because he's holding like a portable waffle maker, and he has it plugged into an extension cord. And he's like, I take the bad guy's face and I bash it in into this waffle, into the waffle maker, and he holds it up against his face, and it's supposed to burn. He's like, ah! Oh my gosh, the Waffler. That's, you know what? If I can be happy that this podcast is going to accomplish anything, it's that I'm giving actual credit to Dane Cook and his performance of the Waffler. Someone needs to ask Dane Cook about that. You know, they need to ask him. What went into that? Was he method with it? Did he study waffles? I want to know. Okay, so then I think I already talked about a lot of the clever writing and whatnot just through the characters. I think that's pretty apparent. But there's a few scenes that I need to talk about, specific scenes that are my absolute favorites in this movie. First one that comes to mind is Ben Stiller when you see him outside of Mr. Furious mode, because that's the other fun part about this movie is that the superheroes, they're people. They're just average people, and you could even argue to say that they actually have powers. They're just people that want to be superheroes, but they all have jobs and responsibilities. And Ben Stiller's character, Mr. Furious, or Roy, I think is his actual name, he works at a junkyard, and he works under this lady that reminds me very much of the character. I won't look up the actual name, but it's in Monsters, Inc., which I think a lot of people have seen that. The one that's like, Mike Wazowski, you failed to file your paperwork. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen that movie. But works for this nasty, nasty older woman that's like, junket. and he's trying to like keep his patience with her, and she just keeps saying junket to him. And then the camera gets right up in his face. It's like the lens must have been like right up in him. And he's like, his blood vessels are going red, and he's like he's trying so hard not to lose his shit. And he has a stress ball, like this little red stress ball. He's just like, squeak, 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 squeak. And then he's like, ooh. He's like, you have no idea. This little sucker just saved your life. Oh my God. Is anybody else like that where like you can just make yourself laugh when you think about stuff like that? Oh my God. It's that scene, it kills me. I think I commented on early in the episode when the Blue Raja is at home and he's rehearsing, he's doing these red eyes, and he's holding up his silverware, and his character's British, so he's British and French. I don't know. It's a strange accent. But then he lives at home. You find out he's like this, I don't know, 30-something-year-old man that lives at home, and his mom, they do like the whole kind of cliche thing of like the mom that wears like the nightgown all the time. She's kind of old and doesn't really do anything, just putzes around the house. And she hears him rehearsing and has no idea that he goes out at night to be a superhero. And she's like, Jeffrey, what are you doing? Like, he breaks character. He's like, Mom, like, what are you doing? Like, get out of my room. Like, stop. And just really, really fun. I talked about the tryout scene because that's where Dane Cook's there. So I think that pretty much covers that scene and why it's so good. He stands out. But maybe I should talk about the ballerina man. That scene I remember as a kid in particular always stood out to me because they're seeing, like, reject, nope, we don't want you, next. And then this mysterious man and dressed in black, and he has like a gown on. He kind of looks like Zorro. Kind of looks like Zorro, and like they kind of inch up Ben Stiller and William H. Macy and that guy from the Burger movie I mentioned. They all sit up because they're intrigued. They're like, ooh, like this guy might be serious. And then he says, I am Ballerina Man. And he flings back his black cape, and he's wearing like tights and this big pink ballerina thing, and starts doing like these kicks, and they play classical music, and they're all like deeply disturbed. They're like, what the heck are we watching? Oh gosh, that's so great. And then every scene with Jeffrey Rush, I talked about how much I love his character, but the guy steals every scene that he's in. He's amazing. And then the very last scene I will talk about, and then I'll start to wind this down, is the training. Because the Sphinx character, he's supposed to be this legendary crime fighter, and he eventually comes across the Mystery Men and takes them somewhere, I guess outside of the city, Champion City, to a place to train. And he's supposed to be teaching every character sort of like a unique thing to them, so that spiritually within themselves they're supposed to find some truth, or I don't know. They're supposed to discover something within them that they've been hiding, because he says, like, if you're not truthful to yourselves, you'll never be the best hero you can be, which I'll say that. Here, I'll throw in one semi-serious thing there. The Sphinx is actually not too wrong about that. Because I do think that if you are not truthful to yourself in the long run, you will be lying to yourself, and you will not be the best you that you can be unless you are totally and 100%. Hang on, I gotta drink some more water. If you're not totally honest with yourself, you will eventually live a life that you are not happy with. It's that simple. But hey, let's go back to the funny. So, in the training scene, what stands out is Ben Stiller, who hasn't really bought into the Sphinx at all. He just thinks he's like this phony baloney guy that's just trying to train them because he's got nothing better to do. And there's a scene where his character is supposed to balance a tack hammer on his head. He's just supposed to balance a hammer, and like you can see, he keeps trying to put the hammer on, keeps falling off, and rightfully so, he questions Sphinx. He's like, well, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And the Sphinx says something all wise. He's just like, if you balance a thing on your head, it's like your balance as an attacker will become better, or something. And yeah, Mr. Furious, he's like, oh, like whatever. But then he's just like, well, he says, well, and why am I wearing watermelon on my feet? And the camera, brilliantly, slowly does, it starts on his midsection, and it goes all the way down to his feet and shows that he has two big watermelon that his feet are in. And then it slowly pans back up to their face, and there's a great pause, and then Sphinx, confusingly so, says, I don't believe I told you to do that. And you're just like, what? Oh gosh, it's just stuff like that makes this movie so damn funny and just silly. Just, don't take a movie like this too seriously. That's one of the things I would say about this. So all of that said, ultimately I'm going to circle back to the question I believe I posed towards the beginning of the podcast, which is, does this movie hold up? It's one I could, it's subject to interpretation, like any question like this, because, I may think this movie is very charming and funny and kind of silly, and, it's very colorful and flashy, and, it's not, I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. I mean, there's definitely some campy elements to it, some clunky storytelling, if I want to really critique it like a film, I could probably find a bunch to nitpick on. But I don't know. As I said, this is a movie that I think you should go into it knowing what you want. And if you're wanting a movie that is just pure escapism, you don't really need to think about it too much. You can just turn your brain off. You'll be easily entertained by the visuals, by the wonderful cast, the clever writing and commentary on superhero films. I think you'll really enjoy this movie. And I would also say that if you're just looking for something outside of all the superhero movies that get churned out now from Marvel and DC, and I'm not knocking them. I'm not knocking those movies. I want to be clear about that because I like a lot of them. But movies like this, I just really don't think get made. Not now. Because there is tones of this movie that are certainly more of a product of the time. They were more relevant then. I don't think every aspect of this movie holds up in the long run, but you got to give it to the movie's original premise, the great cast, and again, just the very clever writing and takes that it has on so many tropes that you see in superhero movies. I just think that anybody that likes movies even a little bit could probably find at least one or two aspects of this movie that they would at least have a mild smile on their face on and not completely regret watching it. So, think about that for what it is. I don't really know, but I'm going to endorse a lot of movies on this. So, gosh, I don't know. Maybe I need another cup of coffee. Is that it? It is early in the morning, so I don't know. Anywho, that's all I got to say on Mystery Men. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. I think it's a really fun movie, and I'm just thinking out loud. I enjoyed this episode in particular just because it is nice to talk about movies that aren't, so serious where I need to really dive into what does it all mean. I think that makes sense. You get what I'm saying out there? Do you? I don't know. Are you still listening at this point? Okay. That is all I have to say on Mystery Men. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. So, really appreciate everybody that's giving this a listen. Remember, while you're here, go ahead and hit the follow button there on Spotify. That's going to help me just continue to grow this podcast, grow the audience, etc. If you haven't already, you can go ahead and check out the podcast Instagram, which is at ScreenSpeak Podcast. I will be posting photos of any guests that I have on there. I may give you a little sneak peek to what I'm going to talk about in upcoming episodes, like I did with Mystery Men, and just more stuff. I'll get better with Instagram as time goes on. I admit I am not the most social media savvy person out there, and I don't always like to share a ton of things on there, but I'm trying to get better about it, at least for the sake of growing the podcast. So go ahead and follow that. And then the last thing I'll say is to check out the podcast YouTube channel, which is just ScreenSpeak. If you just want to, maybe share with your friends or family or whoever some short clips of the episodes, you can go on there because I upload sound bites on there from each episode. I need to go back and actually put a couple of other ones out there, but couple short clips. They're like 5 minutes long. Go out there, give it a look, subscribe to the channel. Again, just share it, follow it, do whatever, spread the word that this is a thing. And that's it. So I hope everybody that's listening, you have a good rest of your weekend. Go into the week on a positive note and just have a good time. And yeah, that's it. Just be good, be happy. And like I said at the beginning, it's got nothing to do with Mystery Men, but ask people how they're doing, okay? Maybe I should do that. Start ending the podcast on a positive note. Could that be good? I don't know. It's turned into a brainstorm out loud session. I don't know. It's derailing. It's derailing. Okay. I'm going to stop before I go into even more ramblings that don't make any sense. Yeah, that's good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Be awesome. Be good. I'll see you later. Take care.